Nations Security Council is hosting its meeting now live.
1.7 million people remain displaced, mainly in overcrowded shelters without adequate access to water, medical care, and food supplies. Last week, I traveled to Gaza, where I met displaced communities and humanitarian personnel working tirelessly on the grounds to deliver assistance. The picture remained bleak. While the availability and price of basic food commodities has improved, key sources of protein such as chicken, meat, and egg remain out of reach for many families. The UN and its partners are still facing challenges in providing shelter materials such as tents and blankets. As we enter the winter months, these delays must be urgently resolved. There is a critical need to transition from emergency humanitarian assistance towards enabling communities to rebuild their lives and restore essential services. Hospitals continue to struggle without electricity and reliable water, severely limiting their ability to care for patients. The water and sanitation situation remains alarming. Sheikh Radwan Pond has effectively become an open sewage tank, requiring immediate attention to prevent a public health catastrophe. Key materials must be permitted to enter immediately to repair vital water and sanitation facilities. The rerouting of humanitarian and commercial movements through the Philadelphia corridor and Al Rashid coastal road has complicated logistics, further delaying the distribution of much needed aid. Despite these hurdles and setbacks, the UN and its partners are working to scale up the response. An immunization campaign to reach 44,000 children has been launched, and hundreds of water wells have been opened. Over 24,000 metric tons of aid have been collected, yet 190,000 metric tons of food, medicine, and shelter are repositioned in the region and awaiting aid. I call on Israel to expand crossing capacity and expedite the clearance of supplies, including UN supplies. The opening of the Jordan corridor and the Rafah crossings are vital to further scale up the response, and the removal of the NGO registration is essential and remains unresolved. The UN is engaged with Civil Military Coordination Center, including its 22 partners, mostly from the member states, to coordinate the delivery of assistance and uphold humanitarian principles. These efforts have yielded benefits for the Gaza population, including increased food supply and higher levels of approvals for shelter and non-food items, particularly for government-to-government aid. I also welcome today's news on the restoration of the fiber optic internet service provision in Gaza, the positive results of these efforts. Mr. President, the damage in Gaza, physically, economically, and socially, is catastrophic. We cannot address only immediate physical needs. Psychosocial needs, social cohesion, and justice must be addressed. There must be a restoration of dignity and honor. These efforts must be anchored in clear political horizon for resolving the conflict, ending the unlawful occupation, and realizing the two-state solution. The task ahead is monumental and will require a well-coordinated, phased international effort. We must help create the conditions in which people can begin to rebuild their lives with dignity. And there is no time to lose. The European Union, United Nations, and World Bank are working to update the Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment, called RDNA, which in March estimated reconstruction's cost at some $53 billion. The UN's immediate early recovery approach in Gaza has been aligned with the Palestinian Authority's recovery and reconstruction planning and can contribute to realizing the objectives set forth in Security Council Resolution 2803. I welcome the European Union's convening of the Palestine Donor Group in Brussels last week. It demonstrated a strong commitment to durable recovery and reconstruction in Gaza, strengthening linkages between the West Bank and Gaza, and the full resumption of the Palestinian Authority responsibilities in Gaza. Preparations are also ongoing for the Cairo Conference for Gaza Reconstructions, which offers a chance to align recovery priority with broader vision of Gaza's reconstruction. I welcome Egypt's continued leadership in this effort. Mr. President, turning now to the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, settlement expansion, the proliferation of outposts, violence including settler violence, displacement, and evictions continue to escalate at an alarming rate. Israeli military operations, particularly in the northern West Bank, have resulted in deaths, destruction, and continuous displacement of thousands, particularly from refugee camps. The Israeli operations have also continued deep in Area A. Settler violence has reached emergency levels. In October, during the olive harvest season, the UN recorded the highest number of settler attacks on Palestinians since the UN monitoring began, an average of 8 per day. The olive harvest is an economic and cultural lifeline. These attacks have injured farmers, destroyed olive trees, and decimated livelihoods. In many cases, Israeli forces failed to prevent or were complicit in such acts. In other instances, Israeli settlers have violently confronted the Israeli forces. Arson attacks and the desecration of holy places by settlers have further heightened tensions and illustrate the spiraling violence. It must stop. I note the condemnation of these attacks by the government of Israel, and the concrete action is needed now to end the impunity for these crimes. Palestinian communities must be protected. Palestinian attacks, including acts of terror, such as the recent ramming and stabbing attack south of Jerusalem, must also cease and be condemned. All perpetrators of violence must be held accountable. I appeal to political and community leaders to cease the incitement and incendiary language that only fuels further extremism. Mr. President, a robust Palestinian economy and financial sector is a critical enabler for sustainable recovery and reconstruction efforts in Gaza. However, Palestinian Authority and its economy continue to face immense challenges. Unilateral measures that undermine the PA should cease, and efforts to support and strengthen the PA should be intensified, including in implementing its reform agenda. The Palestinian financial sector, while demonstrating remarkable resilience, is under tremendous pressure and must be protected. Immediate measures to allow the repatriation of excess shekels banknotes and renewal of the correspondent banking agreements are urgently required to avoid exacerbating the crisis. Mr. President, turning to development. In similar vein, I reiterate Secretary General call for the parties to uphold their obligation to maintain the cessation of hostilities and the full implementation of the Security Council Resolution 1701. I also echoed Secretary General's call for the immediate cessation of all violations of civil sovereignty and territorial integrity and the Council Resolution 1701. I also echoed Secretary General's call for the immediate cessation of all violations of civil sovereignty and territorial integrity and respect for the 1974 disengagement of forces. Mr. President, the decisions made now will determine whether the ceasefire endures or not. The first phase of the ceasefire must be fully implemented, and I urge the parties to urgently reach an agreement on the modalities to implement its forces. The challenges remain immense, but the cost of failure is unmeasurable. We have the tools to lay the foundations for success, but the work ahead demands an unwavering commitment from everyone. The UN resolutions, including Security Council Resolution 2803, and President Trump the pathway forward. United Nations remains committed to seizing this critical opportunity to move from crisis management to conflict resolution. All our efforts must be guided by the imperative of establishing a genuine political process that will resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict once and for all. The New York Declaration and initiatives such as the Global Alliance for the Two-State Solution play a vital role. They mobilize political will, investment, and solidarity around a shared political vision. The United Nations will continue to stand with both Palestinians and Israelis. We will continue to support all efforts to end the unlawful occupation and achieve a negotiated two-state solution based on the 1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states, living side by side in peace and security. Mr. President, I thank you and the Council for your attention.
I thank Mr. Alakbarov for his briefing. I now give the floor to those Council members who wish to make statement. I give the floor to the representative of United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I thank Deputy Special Coordinator Alakbarov for briefing us today.
Sound check.
Last week, this
Can you guys
Council
hear me?
adopted Resolution
Dito na po
2803,
ang mga
sending a powerful message of international
malulokong lakas pala
support
ng music
for
kanina.
President Trump's 20-point plan
Check.
for Gaza and the
Sino
diplomatic
nandyan?
efforts
May tatlo
of
pala
Qatar,
nanonood.
Turkey, and Egypt.
Nabuburata naman si
This marks a
Captain
pivotal
dito.
moment after 2 years of horrendous suffering,
World War III na ba?
and it's crucial to cementing the
Oo.
ceasefire and charting a course
Akala ko
towards
ba
lasting
tigil na
peace.
tong ano.
We urge all parties to abide by the ceasefire, and
Oo, tigil
we
na sila.
reiterate that Hamas must locate and hand over the bodies of the remaining 3 deceased
natin.
hostages. President, I will make 3 points. First, Resolution 2803 must be implemented fully, effectively,
Ba't ba
and in accordance
tinatake?
with international law. We need an international stabilization force and trained Palestinian police deployed quickly to support the ceasefire and avoid a vacuum that Hamas could exploit.
Ito nga, Hamas pa pala. Siguro
Hamas should
umano
uphold
din
their
yung Hamas,
commitments
no?
under the 20-point plan to disarm and end their governance over Gaza.
Makit kayo
Transitional
dyan. Ito,
arrangements
lalagay ko yung link.
must respect Palestinian sovereignty and self-determination and pave the way for a reformed Palestinian Authority to resume governance in Gaza. Palestine must be run by Palestinians. We look forward to the urgent formation of a Palestinian committee alongside the Board of Peace. Second, Resolution 2803 underscores the importance of the full resumption of humanitarian aid in Gaza. The humanitarian situation remains catastrophic. Heavy rains have deepened the misery, worsening shelter needs as winter closes in. The United Nations has confirmed that over 1.5 million people are in urgent need of emergency shelter, yet Israel continues to restrict life-saving
Okay ba
aid.
yung sound, guys? Nilagyan ko ng
Every
background
crossing
music
and
para
route
hindi tayo
must be
maano.
opened without delay
Ayun,
and
ito ng
essential
8 lang pala.
items, including shelter kits and medical supplies, allowed in.
Kailangan natin bilisan eh.
Last winter, at least 8 newborns died of hypothermia in fewer than 3 weeks. Those deaths were preventable. Israel must allow aid in now, without delay, and permit the United Nations,
May peace
including
talk na
UNRWA,
rin na pala
as well
ang
as
ano.
international...
Ayan. Balik natin konti. Ano yung peace talk sa ano? Ito.
Extension list, and when is this next
Official
extension list, and when is
trade
this
talks
next
in
list
Brussels,
coming?
Belgium.
My hope.
Hindi natin ano to. Yun sa ano tayo. Ito, matindi to. Matindi to yung ano si
Workers are being priced out not just
Ma'am
by
Dani.
public transit rising costs,
Yan
not
natin.
just by rent,
Sabi
not just by
nila
childcare, but
ano,
also by
atindi daw
utilities.
to
And the fact that every
socialist
year those
communist
utility
daw to
costs
eh.
only seem to rise, no matter what happens with other costs across the board. And this will continue to be a focus for myself, and also I anticipate a conversation that I will continue to have with the
Ano yun natin yung ano.
as soon as I have them, I'll share.
What's the first thing you have New Yorkers expecting you to take office?
Si ito
And we
si
will have a city hall
Mandani.
that is ready and prepared to deliver from day one. And that is what we are spending this transition doing. And one of the most recent decisions we made to retain Commissioner Tisch was one that actually came up in the conversations that I had with President Trump. It was one that he saw, as do I, as do many New Yorkers, as a reflection of the importance we're placing on public safety and the importance of continuing the results we've seen under Commissioner Tisch's leadership of lowering crime across the 5 boroughs.
Hello. So with me, a lot of people describe the nature just to put it in layman's terms, a lot more friendly than maybe some people expected. Given comments on both sides, but frankly also just some differences politically. Were you surprised at this going to the meeting?
I was appreciative of the tone and the fact that both of us were looking to have a productive meeting. And I appreciated the president not only having me in the Oval Office alongside my chief of staff, but also giving us a tour of the cabinet room where we saw a portrait of FDR. And as we looked at that portrait, I spoke about how the New Deal was transformative for this country. And I shared my belief that Beiruit LaGuardia was the greatest mayor in New York City's history. And you cannot tell the story of LaGuardia without telling the story of his relationship with FDR and the potential for a federal government and a municipal government to work together to deliver on dignity for working people. That's at the heart of the campaign that we run. That has to be a part of the work that we do.
That's at heart, ha? Matindi. Matindi lang ang salita, ha?
So I think a lot of people online after this meeting considered that there were
Ano natin to? Imove
Somebody had
natin
won,
ng
somebody had lost
konti.
this
Yan sa Ukraine talks, peace talk na sa ba? Ito na, Times Square. The Constellation Ball. Na-unveil na sa Times Square para sa New York New Year's Eve. Ba, Constellation Ball, ah. Tayo sa ano, sa peace talks. Ito ba yan?
Department of Homeland Security are spent appropriately keeping our country safe.
Ito
We
pala.
recognize that investments don't only come in the form of
Maganda
equipment
to,
and in the form of resources that are out on the ground, but
may
also comes in the
bonus,
form of blessing our
10K
people and
bonus
making sure that our
checks
people
to
are taken care of with their
TSA
wages, their benefits,
workers.
but also bonuses and recognition for when they go
Totoo
above and
kaya
beyond.
to?
So because of that, we have an opportunity here to bless our folks with rewards for their hard work and to recognize that part of the strength of the Department of Homeland Security, part of the strength of the United States of America are the
Totoo
people who
kaya
show up each
to?
and every day committed to
Ano?
serving each other. We have $10,000 bonus payments that we will be paying to each of the individuals behind us, recognizing that they are examples that we will continue to work to train every single individual under the department to do and to
10,000
serve such as they
bonus yan,
did
guys,
during this
10,000
last challenging and difficult
bonus.
time. And also
Malupit.
recognizing that this is a season to be grateful, to be thankful for people,
10,000
and to go out
bonus.
and to make sure that they know it and that we give them the opportunity to spend some time with their families. So let me begin with Alex.
Ito na po mga troll. Nagpasok.
We're
Pasok
just
ka,
watching here as Secretary
Axel.
of Homeland Security Kristi Noem on Sunday, delivering those $10,000 bonus checks to some of the TSA workers that worked through the government shutdown at the Minneapolis-St. Paul International
Pasok ka,
Airport.
Axel. Nung
We're going to
makita
step
mo,
away for a quick commercial
nagsasabi
break, but
mo.
we'll continue to follow this and many more of your top stories
Hindi ka nang papasok eh.
when we come back.
10,000 bonus. Oh, malupit ah. Ito po.
Tune in with us this Thursday for Thanksgiving Day. We're going to be
Saka
showcasing
alam
the New
niyo
York City.
po, meron po tayong ito sa Ukraine. Ayan natin to. Tagal-tagalan nitong sa Ukraine eh. Nasaan ba to? Tayo nag-ano lang ng mga balita,
But this
guys.
is a press conference that's held by the speaker there and chairman of the Parliament of Ukraine following a summit in Stockholm within the framework of the Crimea platform. Let's listen in live.
Латинська Америка, Південна Америка та Австралія і Японія. Більшість із представників цих країн були присутні тут у Стокгольмі. Деякі були присутні за рахунок відеоповідомлень. Ми звернулися з моєю колегою Стефанчуком і закордонних справ Марія Штогнагор також виступала. Дуже багато було країн, і той факт, що вони були тут присутні або особисто, або в цифровому форматі, означає про те, що багато людей підтримують Україну і розуміють, що це не тільки свобода України, яка зараз на кону.
Hindi natin maintindihan. Parang si Axel lang.
Сьогодні
Parang si Axel lang, di maintindihan.
So as you're watching here, this is coming in live from Stockholm over in Sweden. There is translation. Unfortunately, both the original audio and the translated audio, it seems to be on both audio channels.
Hindi
I'm not sure if you guys are
maintindihan.
following
Ayan.
what I'm saying, but
Stop spamming.
usually I'm able to
Kulit mo
isolate
daw,
one or the
Axel.
other. So we're working to get possibly another feed, and I do believe we have it here. So let's head to this one now. I'm going to try to
Nagkagulo-gulo. Ano yung muna natin to sa TSA? Since nasa
All right, Greg,
airport
thanks for
tayo.
joining us down there over in Philly. I hope that everything goes smoothly. And of course, have a happy Thanksgiving week. We'll be checking in with you soon.
Sa Philly to, sa Philly.
I do want to bring us out to this, another live look that we have over in Newark, International Airport. As our team at Fox 5 in New York was talking about it just before we brought Greg on, I do want to give us this, again, though, this live vantage point. Later on today, Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, going to be there speaking about a lot of this air travel. So we are hearing from several experts that this Thanksgiving holiday season is going to be breaking records. And more generally, Thanksgiving is one of the busiest, if not the busiest, holiday travel weeks. So dare I say it, pack your patience. Oh man, we're already starting with that. All right, let me take a look here. Also, this social media post from the FAA, it says, flying for Thanksgiving 2025, you're not alone, as we expect this to be the busiest Thanksgiving travel season in 15 years. Tuesday, November 25th.
Oh, lagi naman sinasabi nila yun eh. Pero sabi nga dito, so buti na lang nagbukas ang government at bibigyan pa ng 10,000 bonus ang mga TSA agents. Ayos ah. Saan kaya nakuha yung perang yun? So, applying for Thanksgiving 2025. You're not alone. It's BC daw. November. BC. So, this, ready na kayo. Be patient. Arrive early. Until they get more tips at...
We'll see the most air travel next week with 52,185 forecasted flights.
Balikan natin yung mga hindi natin napanood. Ito nga sa Israel.
Have they issued any kind of response? Do we know how they may respond given the events
Killed
of the past few hours?
In Beiruit strike. Yung leader ng Hezbollah. Kaya pala.
They'll indicate that this is a violation of Lebanese sovereignty, which is correct. They will say that Tabatabai was a martyr, etc. In terms of Iran actually engaging in any sort of violence against Israel, it seems highly unlikely. All of Iran's recent engagements with Israel, its military engagements, which really hadn't happened in a direct way before 2024, all of them have gone extremely poorly for Iran, to put it very mildly. So I do not expect any sort of significant Iranian response. Israeli intelligence is warning that they expect that Hezbollah itself might respond, but they won't. They don't think that they will respond directly. As in, they don't expect an attack on Israel to be forthcoming. What they would expect to be more likely would be attacks on Israelis and potentially Americans in other countries, other third countries. Hezbollah has presence throughout the world in small groups, including in Latin America, actually. And so it's definitely possible that we could see something like that.
Benjamin Allison, a graduate fellow at Clemson National Security, PhD, candidate of history at the University of Texas in Austin. We appreciate your time here at Live Now from Fox. Take care.
Israel.
All right, I do want to filter through some more of these social media posts that we have gotten more specifically from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Taking a look at this first one, he says this: it is not for nothing that the U.S. put a bounty of $5 million on his head. Tabatabai served as a senior commander in the Rabban force. This is the force that prepared to conquer the Galilee and slaughter many of our citizens. We also have this. He says recently he led Hezbollah's renewed efforts to rearm. This is, of course, after the heavy blows Hezbollah suffered in the pager operation, in the damage to its missile stockpiles, and of course, in the elimination of Nasrallah. And then finally, this: I thank the IDF and the security forces which carried out a professional, accurate, and successful operation today. A live image once again over at Jerusalem in Israel. We'll be right back.
Na rin tayo, ayaw nyo naman umakyat. Sino itong mga nandito?
Also spoke about the fact that he was looking to cut the red tape. But in effect, we're seeing quite a strange situation with regulation at the moment. We're seeing obviously great divergence between the UK and the EU. We're seeing regulatory burden, we're seeing regulatory drag.
Axel, kagigising ko lang. Ikaw matulog. Wala kang ginagawa dito. Kagigising ko lang. Ay, ano to? Slenderman stab capture by... Attend dito sa Slenderman ah. Anong nangyari dito? Ito ba yung in-attack? Last day. Ito yung in-attack nga sa Chicago. Ayun o.
the reporting courtesy of our partners at Fox 32 in Chicago. It says this: a Wisconsin woman who admitted to nearly stabbing a classmate to death at age 12 to please the online horror character Slender Man has been found in Illinois after she cut off an electronic monitoring device and left a group home. That's according to authorities. What we know is that Madison police issued that alert Sunday for Morgan Geyser, who is now 23 years old, saying she was last seen around 8 p.m. Saturday with an adult acquaintance. Going out to this.
Bata pa nito, no? Wala, grabe. Ito si Axel, ganito rin ang style nito eh. Kaya lang hindi niya magawa. Hindi niya magawa hanggang ganyan lang. Hanggang sa comment section. Pero ito, si Slenderman Stabber capture after nationwide manhunt.
Social media post from Fox 6 News. So the department, they issued...
Ito pa, meron pang release of student sa Nigeria naman to. Ano yun natin? Mamaya yun sa
that update late
Nigeria.
Sunday that Geyser was taken into custody in Illinois and she was found at a truck stop in Posen, Illinois. The Posen Police Department confirmed...
Sa ano lang to, sa ayun daw, ewan ko, public transportation, pinagsasaksak na. Diba? Si Morgan Geyser was taking custody in Illinois on Sunday. So kahapon lang. Si yun yung Slenderman Stabber.
Posen is about 25 miles south of Chicago, and the community is about 170 miles south of Madison. Geyser was found with a 42-year-old man who was charged with criminal trespassing and obstructing identification. Posen police confirmed. He has since been released from custody. Geyser was placed in a group home this year after being granted conditional release from the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. She was sent to the Psychiatric Institute in 2018 after pleading guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide in a deal with prosecutors to avoid prison. That stabbing occurred back in 2014. Geyser's attorney, Tony Cotton, said Sunday that he did not know what happened with his client and urged Geyser to turn herself in. The Madison Police Department said Sunday that it was not made aware that Geyser was missing until nearly 12 hours after she left the group home. The State Department of Corrections received an alert Saturday night that Geyser's ankle monitor had been malfunctioned. The department contacted the group home where she lived about 2 hours later and was told she was not there and had removed the bracelet. The Department of Corrections issued an apprehension request just after midnight. The police department said it did not learn.
Tumakas din pala. Ito sa Ukraine.
From both the Ukrainian and American side about the progress we've made today.
Ito na nga si Senator. Si Rubio. Mike. Nandun din pala si Rubio.
Worked on with regards to particular provisions. I mean, clearly, I think we all recognize that part of getting a final end to this war will require for Ukraine to feel as it is safe and it is never going to be invaded or attacked again. So that's clearly something that has to be discussed. I think we've made substantial progress on that and other points, but I'm not going to get into the details today about all of it. I have time for two more, guys, because I got to run. For what? Am I what?
Would there be a call between President Trump and Zelensky?
I don't know. It's possible. I'm not sure. Tomorrow? We keep working. I mean, look, this process. No. This process has been ongoing now for the better part of 3 weeks, and it's really sped up in the last 96 hours. So we have all kinds of people at technical levels that are working full time on this and engaged in this full time. In fact, even as we got up and broke up now and walked away from the table, there are a handful of technical items that we expect answers from them on or suggestions from them on in the next 24 hours or so. So this is an ongoing process. We don't have to be here in this building for that to move. But we thought today.
Matindi. Buti may peace talks na rin. Matagal na rin pala daw. Matagal na daw yan. Ngayon lang talaga na gano'n. Ito na nga, oh.
Say this, that Ukraine leadership has expressed
Ukraine and US official meet for peace talks. Ito na.
The USA continues to sell massive amounts of weapons to NATO for distribution. Does get cut off there. Ivan, I do just have one more final question for you. President Trump has set a Thursday deadline for Ukraine to respond to the proposal. He's also said that it could be extended if need be. How optimistic are we that we could have a finalized deal by Thursday?
I don't know if this is going to happen or not by Thursday, because there are still, I'm sure, a lot of points that has to be negotiated. This is a very serious thing, and we should not put pressure right now on Zelensky to sign something that is disadvantageous not only to Ukraine, but more importantly to the transatlantic unity, because a lot of those points that were listed in the first 28 points plan were listed in the first 28 points plan were not only dangerous for Ukraine, but more importantly, they were very, very, very precarious for Europe, but also for the United States.
Alrighty, Ivana Strapner with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. We always appreciate your time here at Live Map from Fox. This is
Yan natin, basahin natin yung yung mga posts dito.
It is important to support Ukraine now, and I thank you for that support. Going off of that, President Trump also the weekend posting to social media is saying that European countries continue to buy oil from Russia. So what European countries are still buying this oil, and more importantly, what are they trying to do to make themselves energy independent so as to not fuel this war even further?
So let's go back first to the first social media post, which is erasing the history. One thing that Russia's ultimate goal is to subjugate Ukraine and to truly erase its history. But also, we should not allow that to happen because...
Ito pala si Vladimir Zelensky. Ito yung presidente ng Ukraine, di ba? So, ito, address the participant and urge, do not stay silent, do not be passive, observe of history, be participant. It is important to support Ukraine now, and I thank you for that support. It is important to support the negotiation process, and I'm grateful for every piece of advice and every bit of information we receive from European leaders. And it is crucial to support the principle on which Europe stands. Okay? The borders cannot be changed by force. That war criminal must not escape justice. And that the aggressor must pay fully for the war he started. Si yung Russia nga, si Putin. This is why the decision of Russian assets are essential. Please support this decision, and above all, keep pressure on Russia. Russia is still killing people. Oh wow! Every day, occupied territories remain occupied, and that means Russia remains a criminal state. No,
that's a long-term strategy that Russia has. Now, I want to shift to what you just mentioned.
Mga daming allegation ng ni Zelensky, yung presidente ng Since he should kasi he's the president and protect the Ukraine and to support kasi nga ayan ang nangyayari diyan. Sige lang, tumatawag si Boji.
About European approach. Since 2022, the European countries, well, it depends which countries, but in particular, France and Germany have been more or less, reluctant to step up. Now the situation is a little bit different, but President Trump is absolutely right. It's still numerous European countries are actually buying Russian oil, and they have not imposed enough sanctions. And we still have to make sure that our European allies deliver the weapons that Ukraine needs to put Russia on the defensive. So as some European leaders are blaming fully the United States for not stepping up and helping enough, we also have to, if we are working together as allies, Europe also has to put its act together and to suffer some costs, especially when it comes to buying Russian weapons. So President Trump is absolutely right about that.
And I also just wanted to put this, another social media post from President Trump. He says the war between Russia and Ukraine is a violent and terrible one that with strong and proper U.S. and Ukrainian leadership would have never happened. It began long before I took office for a second term. But again, this kind of continues to reference really European countries and what they need to do, because he goes on to say this, that Ukraine leadership has expressed zero gratitude for our efforts, and Europe continues to buy oil from Russia. The USA continues to sell massive amounts of weapons to NATO for distribution. It does get cut off there. Ivan, I do just have one more final question for you. President Trump has set a Thursday deadline for Ukraine to respond to the
Katatawag lang po ni Boji at sabi niya hindi siya makakapunta sa ating ang dami daw niyang hinuhuli. Matindi pala. Bounty hunter na pala si Boji. Ay, naku po. Ano natin dito? Ito pala. Ito na yung peace talks. Tingnan niya natin.
Why he also needs to get tough, on Putin. He already tried to give Putin what he wanted to have in terms of negotiations, etc. For the past several months. And every time when we wanted to try to negotiate with Russia, Putin would always give us the quotation mark a gift by launching even more weapons. Well, with friends like Putin, we do not need enemies. And that's precisely why we have to understand that we should not fall for those tricks. I'm afraid that Mr. Witkov does not also understand one thing, which is that the whole concept about bringing Russia back to the Western economy is short-sighted. This is a typical Russian intelligence game, because they understand that we in the United States, we love to talk business. We love to talk about win-win strategy. And they understand that by bringing all those business narratives are going to resonate with the White House. That's a typical game, and we should absolutely not fall for this.
You mentioned something really important within that first answer, which is the initial draft of that 28-point peace plan. There was a lot of pushback, including from European allies, but also Congress members here in the U.S. Now, the White House has said that changes were made to the proposal, and they provide a, quote, credible and enforceable mechanisms to safeguard Ukraine's security in both the near and long term. What could those mechanisms possibly consist of?
Number one thing, we really have to think about security guarantees, and not some wishful thinking guarantees, like a feasible guarantees, because even if there are security guarantees, Putin is going to challenge us, and we have to bear that in mind and to follow through our threat. Number two, we should absolutely not leave sanctions on the day one. This has to be slow, like trust but verify, typical Ronald Reagan approach. Russia is the one who should prove that they are a willing partner to stop the war. Number three, and I think this is also extremely important to put in the context, with the latest drone incursions in Poland, with numerous sabotage activities across the West, including cutting sea cables in the Baltic Sea, we have to understand that Putin is waging another type of war, hybrid war, and NATO has to put its act together and to completely restructure its hybrid war response. Number four, we are still not out of the woods yet when it comes to Moldova, when it comes to Poland, when it comes to the Baltic states. So that's also something that Putin has to be cornered and to be told that if he put an inch in one of those countries, that we are going to be willing and able to respond. Number five, I think this is also very important to note. We are talking constantly about ceding the territory, and that's exactly one of the key Russian talking points. Zelensky, that's exactly to put Zelensky in a very bad situation. So he has to defend himself in front of his own people. It's a very uncomfortable situation. And finally, the whole concept about NATO expansion, how Russia wants to portray, it's a typical propaganda. Russia never ever feared NATO closer to its own territory. As a matter of fact, NATO was absolutely never involved in any nefarious activities over there. That's a typical Russian point, just to make sure that all those countries closer to Russia are not aligned and closer to the West, because that's also looks bad for the Russian people inside, because they're just looking how all those neighboring countries are actually thriving. So that should not be removed from the negotiation table, because Putin is not the one who is in a position to negotiate. And Carol, if I may just add one more thing, which is very important. One thing that I'm really impressed by President Trump is that he's not falling for Russian nuclear threats, unlike the Biden administration. Putin is going to continue with his typical nuclear threats, and President Trump should absolutely continue with his former mocking the government of Russia, and putting and threatening with nuclear submarines and testing nukes, because that's something that unfortunately still resonates with a lot of policymakers in the West thinking about that Armageddon scenario. So there are still ways that we can put Russia in the defensive, but we also have to put in the context that this war, it's not only about Russia. This is how Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are working together to undermine the West.
I want to shift gears a little bit here and talk about the contributions from several European countries. I'm going to put this, a social media post from President Zelensky. I'm not going to read it in full. It's quite lengthy, but he starts off by saying, the Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform, I address the participants and urge them, do not stay silent, do not be passive observers of history, be participants. It is important to support Ukraine now, and I thank you for that support. Going off of that, President Trump also the weekend posting to social media saying that European countries continue to buy oil from Russia. So what European countries are still buying this oil, and more importantly, what are they trying to do to make themselves energy independent so as to not fuel this war even further?
So let's go back first to the first social media post, which is erasing the history. One thing that Russia's ultimate goal is to subjugate Ukraine and to truly erase its history. But also, we should not allow that to happen, because that's a long-term strategy that Russia has. And now I want to shift to what you just mentioned about the European approach. Since 2022, the European countries, well, it depends which countries, but in particular, France and Germany have been more or less, reluctant to step up. Now the situation is a little bit different, but President Trump is absolutely right. It's still numerous European countries are actually buying Russian oil, and they have not imposed enough sanctions. And we still have to make sure that our European allies deliver the weapons that Ukraine needs to put Russia on the defensive. So as some European leaders are blaming fully, the United States for not stepping up and helping enough, we also have to, if we are working together as allies, Europe also has to put its act together and to suffer some costs, especially when it comes to buying Russian weapons. So President Trump is absolutely right about that.
And I also just wanted to put this, another social media post from President Trump. He says the war between Russia and Ukraine is a violent and terrible one that with strong and proper U.S. and Ukrainian leadership would have never happened. It began long before I took office for a second term. But again, this kind of continues to reference really European countries and what they need to do, because he goes on to say this, that Ukraine leadership has expressed zero gratitude for our efforts, and Europe continues to buy oil from Russia. The USA continues to sell massive amounts of weapons to NATO for distribution. Just get cut off there. Ivana, I do just have one more final question for you. President Trump has set a Thursday deadline for Ukraine to respond to this peace plan proposal. He's also said that it could be extended if need be. How optimistic are we that we could have a finalized deal by Thursday?
I don't know if this is going to happen or not by Thursday, because there are still, I'm sure, a lot of points that has to be negotiated. This is a very serious thing, and we should not put pressure right now on Zelensky to sign something that is disadvantageous not only to Ukraine, but more importantly to the transatlantic unity, because a lot of those points that were listed in the first 28 points plan were not only dangerous for Ukraine, but more importantly, they were very, very, very precarious for Europe, but also for the United States.
All right, Ivana Strapner with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. We always appreciate your time here at Live Now from Fox. This is truly a developing story. A lot of developments, though, within the past couple of days, so we'll see what happens throughout this week. Ivana, thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. We are going to step away for a quick commercial break. Before I do so, though, putting up this,